Jake and I had been best friends for as long as I could remember. We grew up just 3 houses apart on the same quiet cul-de-sac, a place where the days felt long and summers seemed endless. We'd shoot hoops in his driveway until our arms ached, raced our bikes down the street until the sun dipped low, and crash at each other's houses so often it became routine. His place always felt like home to me, and that feeling had a lot to do with his mum, Mrs. Harper. Mrs. Harper wasn't just Jake's mother, she was the heartbeat of that house. Everyone in the neighborhood liked her. She was warm, quick to laugh, and she had this easy charm that made people feel welcome. When we were kids, she was the cool mom, the one who didn't hover but was always there when you needed her. Even as we grew older, she somehow kept that same energy. She was in her early 40s, though you'd never guess it at first glance. Her auburn hair, often tied back in a loose bun, caught the light in a way that made it look like fire. Eyes soft, warm, and always holding a trace of amusement, had a way of making you feel seen. But more than anything, she carried this quiet calm, a steady presence that didn't falter even when everything else around her seemed to dot. Jake had always been the one with a clear head, the one who saw things for what they were. He'd earned a full scholarship to a prestigious university out of state, something I admired him for. I was proud of him, how could I not be? But there was a heaviness in knowing things would never be quite the same. The week before he left, I spent nearly every day at his house, helping him and Mrs. Harper sort through boxes, clean out the garage, and decide what would make the trip with him. She smiled as we worked, pride shining in her eyes, but there was something else there, too, something quieter, a flicker of sadness that seemed to hide behind her laughter. On Jake's final night in town, the 3 of us sat in the living room with takeout cartons balanced on our laps. The TV played some movie none of us were really watching. Mrs. Harper curled up on the couch, a glass of wine in her hand, the flickering light from the screen casting soft shadows across her face. And in that moment, I noticed something about her I hadn't before. She seemed smaller, not in size, but in spirit. It was like the noise and chaos of raising a son for 18 years was suddenly gone, and she was still learning how to breathe in the silence. When it came time for Jake to say goodbye, I hugged him hard, trying to lock in that familiar comfort for just a moment longer. He pulled back with a grin, but there was something in his eyes, to something unspoken. "Don't forget about my mum, all right?" he said. I promised I wouldn't. She act like she's fine. "But she's going to be lonely," Jake had said before leaving. I'd laughed, brushing it off. Yeah. I'll check on her." What I didn't expect was how soon she'd reach out. Just 3 days after he'd gone, my phone buzzed with a text. "Mrs. Harper, hey, I made way too much lasagna. If you're hungry, swing by." It was short, casual, the kind of message neighbors send all the time. But something about it stayed with me. Maybe it was the timing. Maybe it was the way her name lit up my screen that evening. I went over half out of habit, half out of curiosity. The house felt different. The usual hum of music from Jake's room was gone. No sarcastic comments drifting down the hallway. It was quieter, too quiet. Mrs. Harper opened the door, wearing a soft sweater and leggings, her hair loosely tied back. She smiled, but there was something in her eyes I couldn't quite read. "It's weird, isn't it?" she said as I stepped inside. "Yeah," I admitted. "Feels like something's missing." She didn't answer, just motioned toward the kitchen. We ate at the table, the smell of garlic and baked cheese filling the air. She poured herself another glass of wine. I stuck to soda. We talked mostly about Jake's classes, his first impressions of campus, little things he'd said in his last call. But somewhere along the way, the conversation shifted. She started asking about me, my job, my plans, if I was seeing anyone. I laughed, telling her no college dating wasn't exactly going great for me. Seems like as soon as someone finds a guy with a better car, I get ghosted. She laughed, really laughed. That same warm, full sound I remembered from years ago. We talked for over an hour before I finally stood to leave. She walked me to the door, resting one hand on the frame. "You don't have to wait for an invitation to come by," she said. "I'd actually appreciate it. It's nice having someone around." I met her eyes for a moment, something unspoken passing between us. I nodded. "Okay, I'll stop by." That was the start. At the time, it felt simple, friendly. I was just doing what Jake had asked, keeping an eye on her, helping when I could. But there had been something in her expression that night, just beneath the smile, that I couldn't quite name. I would eventually dot. After that first dinner, visiting Mrs. Harper became a quiet routine. Not planned, just natural. Sometimes she'd text with a reason. "The garage door won't close," or "Can you help me move a shelf?" Other times, I'd be driving through the neighborhood and find myself turning onto her street without thinking. She always answered the door with that same smile. Always seemed genuinely glad to see me. The house still smelled faintly of cinnamon and fresh laundry. Her cat still gave me suspicious stares from the hallway. But without Jake's energy filling the space, there was a strange peace, but edged with something unfamiliar. One afternoon, about 2 weeks after Jake had left, I found myself in her attic, helping her rearrange boxes. The air was warm and still, dust motes floating in narrow beams of light from the small window. The floor creaked under our steps, and that's when I noticed. She wasn't just looking at the boxes. She was watching me. It was hot and dusty in the attic, the kind of heat that sticks to your skin. By the time we were done shifting the last box, both of us were breathing heavier than usual. She handed me a glass of lemonade, the condensation cold against my fingers, and we sank into the living room chairs to catch our breath. She looked tired, not in a way that made her seem frail, but in that quiet, graceful way people get when their mind is carrying more than they say out loud. "You know," she began suddenly, "when Jake was little, he used to follow you around like a shadow." I smiled, remembering. "Yeah, I remember. He was kind of annoying at first." She laughed softly, the sound warm. "He adored you, still does, even if he won't say it out loud." I glanced at her. She was looking off toward the window, smiling to herself, cradling the glass in both hands. "It's been quiet here," she said after a moment, her voice lower now. "I thought I'd enjoy the break, but I guess I got used to the noise." A silence settled between us, not uncomfortable, but different. The kind that makes you notice things you didn't before. That night was when I first began to pick up on the changes. Her messages started coming more often. Not just about errands or food, just small, everyday things. "Saw the funniest dog video, made me think of you." Or, "Do you remember the time Jake got stuck in the tree? Still makes me laugh." There was nothing romantic in them, nothing that crossed a line, but they felt personal. Sometimes I'd reply with a quick joke or send something back. Other times, I'd just hit like. But each time her name lit up my phone, I caught myself pausing longer than I should have before opening it. One Friday evening, she texted, "Tried a new chicken recipe and need a victim." Come over for dinner, just us. I had plans with friends that night, but I found myself typing, "Sure, I'll be there," without thinking twice. When she opened the door, she was in jeans and a sleeveless blouse, casual, but with a softness that felt deliberate. Her hair was down, loose round her shoulders, not pulled into its usual bun. Dinner was as good as always. We ate at the small kitchen table. She teased me for sticking to soda while she had a glass of wine. After the plates were cleared, we stayed. They're talking about music, places we'd like to see, old memories. Not about Jake, not about the neighborhood gossip. I realized then that we'd never talked like that before. Two adults in easy conversation. No roles to play, no kid in the room connecting us. At one point, I said something stupid, and she laughed, a kind of laugh that made her tilt her head back for a second before looking at me again. And when she did, her eyes held mine just a little longer than usual. "I haven't laughed like that in a while," she said softly, almost as if she was telling herself. I didn't know what to say, so I just smiled. She reached over and brushed something from my sleeve, probably. Nothing at all, but her fingers lingered for a moment longer than they needed to. "You've grown up a lot," she said softly. I cleared my throat and stood, taking my plate to the sink. I needed to move, though I couldn't explain why my heart was suddenly beating faster. She remained seated, her gaze following me as I turned back. Her smile was gentler now. "You don't have to rush off," she murmured. "I've got work." "Early tomorrow," I said quickly. She nodded, as if she understood. "Of course, I didn't mean to keep you." But something had shifted that night. I could feel it, like an invisible thread had been pulled taut between us. It was subtle, but once it was there, I couldn't unnotice it. Still, I kept going back. I told myself it was just friendship, that I was doing what Jake had asked, checking in, keeping her company, being a good friend to the family. But deep down, there was a new awareness each time I walked through her door. It all changed one late October evening. The air had turned crisp, the kind that carries the scent of wood smoke. I had no plans that Saturday, just a lazy afternoon spent scrolling through my phone, half watching a movie. I thought about texting Mrs. Harper, but I didn't. Not yet. She texted first. "Made stew. Too much again. Come save me from leftovers." I stared at the screen for a moment, smiling without meaning to. Me, "I'll be there in 20. It felt casual-like. All the other times, but the moment I pulled into her driveway, I knew something was different. The porch light glowed warmly, the curtains were drawn, and as I approached the door, I caught my reflection in the glass. I'd smoothed my hair without even realizing it. When she opened the door, she was in a fitted sweater and yoga pants, her hair loose with a soft wave. Her face lit up when she saw me, the kind of smile that wasn't loud or showy, just quietly genuine. "Smells amazing," I said as I stepped inside. "You say that every time," she teased. "Either you're lying or your fridge is sad." "Probably both." She laughed, the sound warm, and motioned toward the kitchen. "Go sit. I'll get us bowls." We settled at the table, the same one where countless conversations had happened before. But this time the air between us felt closer. We talked about everything and nothing: her work, the chill in the air, her new obsession with old mystery novels. She poured herself a glass of wine, then hesitated for a second before pouring one for me as well. "You've earned it," she said softly, her glass clinking against mine. I smiled. "Thanks. I feel honored." The first sip of wine was warm, But it wasn't just the drink that settled over MIT, was the room itself. The soft glow from the lamp, the low hum of the heater, and the faint sound of wind brushing against the windows made it feel cozier than it should. But mostly, it was her. She was in the middle of telling a story from her college days, something about a professor who wore the same green corduroy jacket every day when she paused mid-sentence. Her eyes lingered on me for a moment longer than expected. "You're not a kid anymore," she said quietly. "I still picture you and Jake building blanket forts in the living room. And now look at you." I laughed, maybe a little too quickly. "Still know how to make a pretty good fort." Her smile deepened slightly. Then she stood and carried our empty bowls to the sink. I started to rise too, but she glanced back over her shoulder. "You can stay," she said. I hesitated, half out of the chair. "I mean, if you want company," she added. She didn't move right away. Instead, she leaned against the counter with her wine glass in hand, her gaze resting on me. Her expression was calm, almost unreadable, like she was weighing her words before letting them go. "It's nice having someone here," she said at last. Her voice was softer now. "Someone who understands. Someone who doesn't make me feel like I'm just waiting for time to pass." I nodded, not trusting my voice. The silence wasn't empty. It was charged, like we were both standing on the same invisible line, neither of us certain who would cross first. She returned to the couch beside the kitchen and sat closer this time, her shoulder just a short space from mine. "You really don't have to go," she said, barely above a whisper. I looked at her. She was staring toward the fireplace, but I noticed her fingers brushing absently against her knee, as if her thoughts had slipped somewhere else. The house was still, except for the hum of the heater and the occasional creak of settling wood. "Okay," I said quietly. She turned her head then, and something passed between us, unspoken but unmistakable. Weeks of glances, quiet pauses, and unmentioned thoughts were suddenly acknowledged without a single direct word. "I'm not trying to make this uncomfortable," she murmured. "You're not," I said, maybe too quickly. Her smile was small, but there was something in it, a mix of gratitude and something else, softer, harder to define. She reached out then, slowly, her hand resting lightly over mine. I could have pulled away. I didn't. Her fingers tightened slightly, and she turned toward me fully. "I'm just tired of feeling invisible," she said. Her voice was raw, unpolished, the kind of honesty that doesn't come often. "And you see me?" she said softly. She stood and walked toward the hallway, pausing just before disappearing from sight. She glanced back over her shoulder. "Come here," she said, her tone quiet but carrying something unshakable. Without waiting, she stepped into another room, the door left slightly ajar. My heart pounded. I sat frozen, a storm of thoughts and feelings colliding in my head. I hadn't expected this. I hadn't planned it. But somehow every visit, every conversation, every unspoken pause had been leading to this moment. I rose slowly, my steps echoing faintly as I followed. The door closed gently behind me, shutting out the world beyond, leaving only the sound of our breathing. She stood near the bed, one hand resting lightly on the wooden frame. It felt like she was offering me a choice, and maybe giving herself one too. When she turned toward me, her eyes searched mine, not demanding, not pleading, but open. In that instant, the quiet between us felt heavier than any words. We crossed an unspoken boundary that night, not with grand declarations or rehearsed gestures, but with a shared understanding. There was no pretending anymore, No, just friends. It wasn't some perfect movie scene. It wasn't about fantasy. It was real, complex, quiet, human. Later we sat together, without much speaking. She rested her hand lightly against my arm, her presence steady, her gaze distant in thought. When I finally left, the night air felt sharper, and every step to my car carried the weight of something irreversible. The next few days were strange. Not awkward exactly, but different. She didn't reach out right away, and I didn't either. Still, she was in my thoughts constantly, not just that evening, but every small moment that had led us there. 4 days later, her name lit up my phone. "Hey, I hope you're okay." I stared at the message for a long moment before replying. "Me. I am, are you?" A short pause, then her reply. "I don't know. We didn't talk about it directly, not yet." But the following week, I found myself at her house again. This time, we just sat in the kitchen with coffee between us. The air was calm, but the undercurrent was still there unspoken. But undeniable. No dinner, no wine, no dim lights, just the two of us sitting at her kitchen table. "I don't regret it," she said quietly, her eyes steady on mine. "But I don't want you to feel like you're carrying something heavy because of me." "I'm not," I replied, though we both knew it wasn't the whole truth. She gave a faint, wistful smile. Jake would hate me for this. I didn't answer. Maybe she was right. What we had now couldn't go back to what it was before. But it also couldn't be brushed off like it meant nothing. So we found ourselves in this strange in-between, where feelings were too real to ignore, yet too complicated to define. Over time, the visits became less frequent, not because we stopped caring, but because we were giving space, trying to be careful. Still, that quiet connection remained. I felt it every time I passed her house, every time her name lit up my phone and I hesitated to call. Almost a year has passed. Jake and I still talk sometimes. He doesn't know, and maybe he never will. Mrs. Harper and I exchange the occasional text. Birthdays, holidays, simple check-ins. But sometimes, when the world is quiet, I think about that night. I wonder if it meant more to her than she ever said. I wonder if it meant more to me than I ever wanted to admit. All I know is in that moment, she truly saw me and I saw her. And even if nothing more ever comes of it, I'll never forget the feeling when she looked at me and made me believe I was more than just someone's friend. I was someone worth staying for.